Slava Isusu Christu. I myself didn't realize it's 19 years already. 19 years, it's quite a tradition. How many of you have been here more than 10 times at the banquet? Could you raise your hands? Thank you for that. Thank you for that. There's very few that were here all 19 times, and there's very few of that generation that got this going. But I find it so heartening to see Vera running the show today. Vera is in the third generation of this banquet. Her mother is here, who along Christa Slivotska, along with Adrian, are some of our most generous benefactors. And it's only 2 years ago when we bid farewell to your grandmother, and before that to your grandfather, who represent that greatest generation that came here with nothing. The Slivotskis came, I think it was with like one Canadian silver dollar or something like that. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I think it was just a big blanket.
Yeah, this was Stefan and Volodymyra Slivotska, who worked in a candy factory with my mother here in New York. So I welcome all of you that come to this banquet. Now I want to ask, who is at this banquet for the first time? Can you raise your hand? I welcome you. I welcome you, Archbishop, and all people who are beginning their future lifelong tradition. I met this young man, this doctor from New York today. He's here for the first time. DJ, what can you tell me about this banquet?
It's been fantastic. Very open. It's been fantastic to see a celebration and so much, joy, when I think a lot of what's going on in the world is not that right now. It's kind of
Can you stand up? Can you show your shirt to everybody, DJ? Thank you for being here. DJ is an emergency room doctor who saw the worst of COVID, who was really on the front lines. And we welcome you, and we hope this is the beginning of a lifelong tradition. People at this table you might have been at every banquet, no? I think so. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Now, since we've had many banquets, and since I've spoken at so many, I want to go a little bit deep today. What are the two letters that signify Uku's identity? Those of you that have been at many banquets should know. Pani Maria, Pani Doctor, what are the two letters? It's a quiz. Okay, what about a Uku staff person? Ola, what are the two letters? The two M's, the two M's. And when I used to say that, some people would squirm because the first M is martyrs. Joseph Slipy, our founder, was a living martyr. The church that preserved the faith, that was the biggest organization of opposition to the Soviet Union, was a martyr church. Our church was illegal for 2 generations, completely illegal. And we as a university took them as the teachers for us for the future. And I would tell this to students, that you can learn for the people who are willing to give their lives. Because sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes that becomes necessary. And so we have this young man here. Thank God he's alive, 20 years old, from Odessa. But he's literally given an arm and a leg. And there's a whole series of UKU students who have given their lives. Can you show them, please? Andriy Tibinka, Taras Haiduk, Artem Devin, whose father was my predecessor, the rector, Oleg Vorubyov, Oleg Kursky, Yuri Kustyuk, Mykola Fedorcin, Andy Dobrovetsky, Vasil Figas, Vasil Velichko, Oleg Yashcheshin, and Volodymyr Orlov. The top row is our students. The lower row, actually, they're actually mixed, but half of them are students or graduates, rather. Students and graduates, and others are brothers and fathers. They're not among us in body. Part of this young man's body is not here. But thanks to these women from Revived Soldiers of Ukraine, he's going to walk, he's going to work. I hope you will have a family. Ви розумієте по-англійськи? Так. Ми надіємося, що ви маєте родину і виховуєте таких дітей, які підуть за прикладом вашої вірності, вашої мужності. You know, people were squeamish when I used that word martyr. Students' eyes would glaze over. Until in 2014, in February, one of our faculty gave his life, Bohdan Sulchanik, one of the Heavenly Hundred. And it became a little more understandable. I think now the whole world understands. But I want it to sink in that this university was conscious about this in preparing for this from day one. It's not a surprise for us. What's the other letter? It's easy. M, because there was two M's, right? That's really easy. What does that stand for?
I forgot.
Oh, man. How many evenings did we spend drinking your good wine talking about this? The other M? Anybody? What's the other M? The marginalized. Being close to the marginalized. That's what Jesus did. Jesus went to the poor, to the prostitutes, to those who are rejected, to the crippled, to those who are rotting on the street, to the lepers. And he brought them to the center of his vision. And from day one, UKU brought to the center of a very ambitious academic school, where today it's very hard to get into, highest SAT scores, 10 candidates for every opening. There's a danger of that zero-sum competitive approach. I win if you lose. I got in because you did not. Not good. Not good. But if you put the margins in the middle, if you put people with different mental abilities, in other words, people that have disabilities, in the middle of a university, not because they need your social handout, but because they teach you things that are important. They bring you down. David here, who I'm getting to know, and Tanya, their son went blind at the age of 1 for 6 months, totally blind. And then his sight came back, and David said, "This has changed my life. I bawled on the floor for 5 days." It's when we get close to poverty that we understand our gift. And this is what UKU has been all about and what it has been trying to teach. And for me, it is so gratifying to be here 19 years later. Even though many of the Mohicans are no longer with us in this world, Pan Mykola Haliu can't be with us in this room. 97 years old, long years head of this committee. But the two M's are what are motivating the world. It's Ukraine. You know what the word martyrdom means, Christian. You martyrdom. Don't embarrass me. Don't put me on the spot. Martyr, both in the Greek and Latin version, means witness. It's witnessing to the truth. I can lose, I can die, but I'm going to witness. That's what a martyr is. That's what those men that gave their lives did. That is what our dear friend Andriy did. And UKU has been teaching this from day one, because it's not a кон'юнктура. Ми не добігаємо до цих питань і не витягаємо їх з кишені, коли вони вигідні. А ми починаємо, коли майже ніхто того не розуміє. UKU has taken this position when it was completely unpopular, when it was the Soros Foundation and all the Soros programs were not promoting this kind of, development based on martyrs and the marginalized. We're going to succeed. We're going to be the best. We're going to be profitable and prosperous. All that has its place. But if you're going to be on the cutting edge, it's good to listen to Jesus and follow his example. Jeffrey Wills has done that. At 38 years old, he retired from a tenured position at the University of Wisconsin. And for the last 25 years, he's worked not only in Ukraine, he just told you about Ukraine, but he works in Africa. He's been to Iraq, helping people. There's nothing better than to help somebody. It changes us. It enriches us. It's the paradox of the spiritual life. If you give, if a seed dies, it gives new life. A lot of people are surprised about what is happening in Ukraine. I think many Ukrainians are surprised. But it's really important to understand, or try to understand, where it comes from. This idea of solidarity. The preeminence of human dignity. This subsidiarity. Can I ask somebody what subsidiarity means? It's very simple, but very important context. Anybody want to volunteer? Subsidiarity, it's a little complicated. It basically means trying to make decisions at the lowest possible level. In other words, recognizing the fact that people not at the top can be responsible and should be responsible. Ukraine's success, what Jeffrey painted, where are you, Jeffrey? I can't see where you are. There you are. About civil society is based on these principles. Human dignity, solidarity, subsidiarity, and a fourth one would be the common good. Those are the four pillars of Catholic social doctrine. Now, this might seem like a stretch for you, but go back to 2004 and to the Maidan. How many people were on the Maidan in 2004? Any of you were there? Do you remember where the people were from? 2/3 were from Western Ukraine. The people that manned the Maidan in 2004, the people that seeded the Maidans of 2013, 2014, were largely, disproportionately, if not in a majority way, people from Western Ukraine. people whose culture was formed by the seeds of Sheptytsky, who systematically, over 44 years, spoke about Catholic social doctrine in pastoral letters, in simple doses. Not necessarily theoretically in school, but in church, in ways that could be communicated at feasts, Christmas, Easter. And people came to feel, to have in their bones, these basic principles. Ukrainian Catholics are 8% of Ukraine's population. But Lyubomir Huzar was the #1 moral authority of the country. Many of you knew him. Some of you maybe played volleyball with him at Soyuzivka. He was a priest. Grew up here in New York, in Stamford, went to Fordham. The university that you are supporting, with all its weaknesses, all its limitations, all its failures, strives to live according to the gospel, where the Lord encourages us to be like the seed, like the yeast, like the salt. You don't have to dominate, you don't have to be big, but you have to be true. The right amount of salt, the right amount of yeast. You can be tiny as a mustard seed. And so this university that you support, that here in New York at these banquets, these were the first big public meetings of support for this university, is no longer just a tiny mustard seed. Yes, it's a small university with 2,200 students. There's 120, 130,000 students in Lviv, who is 2% of the student body of the city. But I encourage you to support this university as long as this university sticks to that radical identity, the 2 M's. As long as it struggles to be the salt, the yeast. It's a terrible, terrible war. The losses, I mean, these men, they're incredible, incredible persons. They're the cream. But they have given their lives to teach a lesson. There's no more important seminar or semester going on in Ukraine and at UKU than this war. Now, the teaching moment is going to have to spread. And this is really where it gets, again, paradoxical, again, squeamish. Ukraine will not have peace and justice until Russia is changed. Russia has to be changed, and it will be changed. It will be changed by God's agency through Ukraine, and it's happening already. It's not right now a slogan for everybody. But dear brothers and sisters, we have to preserve our hearts. The evil one, the enemy of mankind wants to get into our hearts and wants us to hate, to fear. Putin wants us to fear. This moment is calling us to be ready not only to win the war, but win the peace with a pure heart, with loving hearts, with hearts that can build, hearts that can forgive. When I was bishop in Paris, I would take people to Verdun, where on a 10-kilometer front, 2 kilometers deep, in 300 days, 300,000 men were killed, 300,000 died without being found or identified, and 250,000 were maimed. 850,000 casualties in 300 days in a territory that is 1/4 of Manhattan. And a few score kilometers away is Reims, where Adenauer and de Gaulle met for a mass in 1962 and said, we have to do something about the future. This German-Ukrainian, German-French warfare that goes on every generation has to end. And now for the last 80 years, it has ended. Our job will not be done until Ukraine changes Russia. And that cannot be done with human power alone. We need God's grace for that. We need to understand the mystery of what the martyrs tell us. We need to bring the margins to the center. I have no doubt that Uku is going to be in the avant-garde. We have been assigned hopeless causes time and time again. It looked hopeless 19 years ago when we talked about this university. It turns out it's relatively easy to build a university that is the model for the reform of higher education. Now we have to build a university that will be a model for geopolitical reform. A reform that has begun. A reform that is destroying the destroyer. But we have to be ready for a future with an even bigger task. Maybe it's too much to say. Maybe it's too much to hear today. 19 years ago, we said things that not too many people could hear. I want to ask you to be big in your heart, to preserve your heart, to really look at what is in your heart, to not let the evil one get in there. To be strong, to be free of fear, to give everything you can, to witness like our martyrs do, to reach out to the margins and contribute to a culture of peace and justice. My hats are off to you, because I think every person in this room has been engaged in incredible efforts, not only over the last 8 months. This banquet is a celebration of who you are, of our community, of our organizations, and of our vision. Never has the world been so Ukrainian. Today, Ukraine is at the epicenter of global change: political, diplomatic, economic, agricultural, energy, and ecology. Let us really stay together. Let us be strong. Let us open our hearts, our minds to God's grace. And let us support this university, which is our best instrument for agency in Ukraine. God bless you all.